Logan's Run, 1976, wasn't just another dystopian science fiction film. It was the most expensive MGM production since Ben-Hur that nearly bankrupted the studio.
Is a slightly out of time piece in a funny way.
The star broke his back during filming and finished the movie in secret agony.
Which should look terrific.
The special effects team quit mid-production after nervous breakdowns, and the ending they released wasn't the ending anyone wanted. These are 16 facts about the future that cost $40 million to create. MGM spent $9 million, their biggest budget. Since Ben-Hur, MGM allocated $9 million for Logan's Run, their largest production budget since Ben-Hur in 1959. The studio was desperately trying to compete with the science fiction boom following Star Wars. However, Logan's Run began production in June 1975, nearly 2 years before Star Wars changed everything. MGM executives believed elaborate science fiction spectacles would dominate the 1970s. They approved massive spending on futuristic sets, costumes, and special effects. The budget eventually ballooned to approximately $14 million with cost overruns. This represented an enormous gamble for MGM, which was already experiencing financial difficulties. The studio needed Logan's Run to succeed commercially to justify the massive investment. When the film underperformed at the box office, it contributed to MGM's financial crisis that nearly destroyed the studio. Michael York broke his back filming the ice cavern chase and hid the injury. Michael York suffered a severe back injury during the ice cavern sequence filmed at Texas's Carlsbad Caverns. He slipped on wet rocks while running and landed hard on his spine. York felt immediate, excruciating pain, but didn't tell anyone. He feared being replaced if producers knew he was injured. York continued filming for 3 more weeks in agony, heavily self-medicating with painkillers. He completed all his remaining action sequences, including climbing, running, and fighting, despite the injury. Only after production wrapped did York seek medical treatment. Doctors discovered he'd fractured 2 vertebrae. They were shocked he'd continued working in that condition. York required months of physical therapy and wore a back brace for over a year. He later called it the stupidest decision of my career. The entire city of domes was built inside a Dallas shopping mall. Production designer Dale Hennessy convinced MGM to build the futuristic city inside the recently opened Dallas Market Center, a massive shopping mall complex. The mall's owners allowed filming in exchange for publicity and rental fees. Hennessy transformed over 300,000 square feet of retail space into the domed city. Escalators, fountains, and modern architecture were incorporated into the futuristic design. The mall remained partially open during filming, creating bizarre situations where shoppers walked past science fiction sets. Some stores complained about lost business from the disruption. However, the arrangement saved MGM millions compared to building sets from scratch. The Dallas location also provided tax incentives that reduced overall costs. Several interior mall locations are clearly recognizable in the finished film to anyone familiar with Dallas architecture. Special effects. Supervisor L.B. Abbott had a mental breakdown. During production, special effects. Supervisor L.B. Abbott suffered a complete nervous breakdown 4 months into production. The stress of creating futuristic effects on a tight schedule with demanding producers overwhelmed him. Abbott had won multiple Academy Awards for previous work and had never experienced anything like Logan's Run's chaos. The miniature work, optical effects, and practical effects all ran simultaneously behind schedule. MGM executives pressured Abbott constantly for faster results. He began working 20-hour days, sleeping in his workshop. Abbott's assistant found him one morning having what appeared to be a psychotic episode, talking to miniatures. He was hospitalized for severe exhaustion and anxiety. Abbott never returned to the production. Glenn Robinson took over effect supervision, mid-production, inheriting Abbott's incomplete work. The transition created additional delays and cost overruns. Jenny Agutter was cast only. Because Raquel Welch rejected the role, MGM originally wanted Raquel Welch to play Jessica Six. Welch read the script and rejected it, believing the female role was too subordinate to the male lead. The studio approached several other established actresses who similarly declined. They viewed science fiction as career-damaging B-movie territory. Director Michael Anderson suggested Jenny Agutter, a British actress relatively unknown in America. MGM executives were reluctant to cast someone without name recognition. Anderson argued Agutter's classical training would elevate the material. The studio agreed primarily because she worked cheaply compared to established stars. Agutter's performance proved inspired, bringing intelligence and strength to a role that easily could have been one-dimensional. Raquel Welch later admitted she regretted passing on the film after seeing its success. The carousel death sequence hospitalized 3 stunt performers. The carousel ceremony, where citizens are killed at age 30, required elaborate wirework with performers suspended high above the stage. The sequence used early cable suspension technology that was unreliable and dangerous. 3 stunt performers were injured seriously enough to require hospitalization during carousel filming. One stunt woman's cable snapped, dropping her 15 feet onto the stage floor. She suffered a fractured pelvis and never worked again. Another performer's harness failed, causing severe back injuries. Safety inspectors shut down production for a week to examine the rigging system. Additional safety measures were implemented, but the carousel sequence remained terrifying for performers. Many refused to participate after the accidents. The injuries added tens of thousands in medical costs and production delays. Modern safety standards would never allow such dangerous wirework. Farrah Fawcett's role was filmed in 2 days before Charlie's Angels made her famous. Farrah Fawcett appears briefly as Holly, one of the New You cosmetic surgery workers. She filmed her scenes in June 1975 as a complete unknown. Her total screen time is approximately 3 minutes. Fawcett received scale payment of approximately $500 for 2 days' work. 6 months later, Charlie's Angels premiered and made her an international superstar. By the time Logan's Run was released in June 1976, Fawcett was one of America's most famous actresses. MGM desperately tried to capitalize on her sudden fame, featuring her prominently in advertising despite her tiny role. Fawcett's brief appearance became a selling point. The studio had unknowingly cast a future icon in a throwaway part. Peter Ustinov was drunk. Throughout his entire performance as the old man, Peter Ustinov played the old man, the first elderly person Logan and Jessica encounter outside the city. Ustinov arrived on location in rural Virginia and immediately began drinking heavily. He continued drinking throughout the 2-week shooting schedule. Director Michael Anderson noticed but said nothing because Ustinov's inebriated performance actually worked for the character. The old man was supposed to be slightly addled and eccentric. Ustinov's genuine drunkenness created authentic confusion and rambling dialogue. Many of his lines were improvised while intoxicated. The cat scenes were particularly chaotic, with Ustinov barely able to follow direction. Anderson later admitted he should have intervened, but was afraid of upsetting the distinguished actor. Ustinov's performance, despite being alcohol-fueled, became one of the film's highlights. He remembered almost nothing about filming it. If you're enjoying these behind-the-scenes secrets about classic science fiction disasters, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next deep dive. We've got more shocking production catastrophes coming soon. Now back to Logan's dystopian future. The entire script was rewritten during production by 7 different writers. The original screenplay by David Zella Goodman went through constant rewrites during filming. MGM kept hiring new writers to improve dialogue and plot points. At least 7 different screenwriters worked on the script simultaneously during production. George Clayton Johnson, who wrote the source novel, was brought in to fix problems. He clashed with other writers and quit after 2 weeks. William F. Nolan, Johnson's co-author on the novel, also attempted rewrites unsuccessfully. The constant script changes meant actors often received new dialogue the morning of shooting. Michael York later said he never knew what his character's motivation was because it changed daily. The chaotic writing process created continuity problems and tonal inconsistencies throughout the film. No single writer could claim authorship of the final screenplay. The box office failure was blamed on Star Wars, but actually preceded it. Logan's Run was released June 23, 1976, performing moderately well initially. The film grossed approximately $25 million domestically, respectable but not enough to recoup MGM's investment. When Star Wars exploded in May 1977, Logan's Run's disappointing performance was retroactively blamed on being overshadowed. However, this narrative is false. Logan's Run had completed its theatrical run months before Star Wars premiered. The films never competed directly. Logan's Run failed because it was over budget, tonally confused, and poorly marketed. MGM executives preferred blaming Star Wars rather than admitting their own creative and financial mismanagement. The miniature city model cost $500,000 and was used for 30 seconds. The elaborate miniature of the domed city cost approximately $500,000 to construct. It was the single most expensive miniature model built for any film at that time. The model measured over 40 feet in diameter with thousands of tiny details, including working lights and moving vehicles. Special effects teams spent 6 months building and filming it. The miniature appears in exactly 32 seconds of finished film. Most of its elaborate details are barely visible on screen. MGM executives were furious when they realized the massive expense produced minimal screen time. The model was destroyed after filming rather than preserved due to storage costs. Richard Jordan was hospitalized 3 times. During production for Exhaustion, Richard Jordan played Francis, Logan's partner, who becomes his enemy. Jordan threw himself into the physical demands of the role with dangerous intensity. He insisted on performing his own stunts despite having no training. Jordan was hospitalized 3 separate times during production for severe exhaustion and dehydration. He worked consecutive 18-hour days filming action sequences in sweltering heat. After his 3rd hospitalization, producers banned him from doing his own stunts. Jordan ignored the order and continued anyway. His obsessive commitment created stunning performances but nearly killed him. The film's PG rating was controversial due to nudity and violence. Logan's Run received a PG rating despite containing brief nudity, sexual situations, and graphic violence. The MPAA rating system was still relatively new in 1976, with less consistent standards than today. Several scenes showing topless women in the love shop sequence appeared uncut in the theatrical release. Parents' groups protested, demanding the rating be changed to R. The MPAA refused, arguing the nudity was non-sexual and artistic. The carousel death sequence showing people exploding was similarly controversial. Some theaters refused to admit children despite the PG rating. The controversy generated publicity that helped box office. The television series adaptation ignored the film's ending. Completely, CBA's produced a Logan's Run television series that premiered September 1977, 16 months after the film. The series ignored the movie's ending where the city is destroyed and people are freed. Instead, the show depicted Logan and Jessica as fugitives still running from Sandmen in an unchanged dystopia. This creative decision baffled audiences who'd seen the film. The series essentially pretended the movie's conclusion never happened. Gregory Harrison replaced Michael York. Heather Menzies replaced Jenny Agutter. The show lasted only 14 episodes before cancellation. Critics called it a pale imitation that undermined its own source material. Jerry Goldsmith's original score was rejected and replaced. Mid-production MGM initially hired composer Jerry Goldsmith to create the film's score. Goldsmith composed a traditional orchestral soundtrack in his characteristic style. Director Michael Anderson and the producers listened to Goldsmith's work and rejected it entirely. They wanted something more futuristic and electronic to match the film's aesthetic. Goldsmith was furious, calling it the worst professional rejection of his career. The studio hired Jerry Fielding to compose a new electronic-influenced score. Fielding had only 6 weeks to complete what normally required months. The rushed replacement score is considered inferior to what Goldsmith would have provided. Alternate ending director Michael Anderson filmed a significantly different ending that MGM executives rejected as too downbeat. In the deleted version, Logan and Jessica return to the city successfully, but the citizens refuse to believe them about the outside world. The computer is destroyed, but people choose to rebuild it rather than face freedom. The final shot showed construction beginning on a new computer, while citizens voluntarily returned to their domes. Anderson intended this as commentary on how people prefer comfortable lies to difficult truths. MGM found it too cynical and unmarketable. Logan's Run could have been MGM's science fiction masterpiece that saved the studio from bankruptcy. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about runaway budgets, injuries, nervous breakdowns, and creative chaos. The real ending was rejected. The effects supervisor collapsed, and millions of dollars bought 30 seconds of miniature footage. Some futures cost too much to create.